My journey with Ed started 8 years ago now, when he was doing clubs and small theatres, and he had just sold his first headline tour, which was a series of about 7 dates around the UK, playing 1,000-seat theatres and music halls. And I got brought on board to be a production manager and sound engineer, and he wanted to have some kind of production values to his show. So we started then, so I came on board for 7 shows, and 8 years later we're still out there doing it. Technically it's not a very complex setup with the audio, everything emanates from Ed and his guitar and his vocal, so that there aren't any complicated instruments on stage or massive orchestration on stage. The loop pedal is something that's quite clever, that was custom built for Ed and for us. We're able to loop multiple channels, and I'm able to receive multiple channels at front of house. We've limited that, so we really only have sort of 13 physical inputs from the stage for the whole show. But the way that breaks down into splitting guitars into sort of multiple bands of frequency bands of channels, and I do the monitoring from front of house as well, so that duplicates the channels again. We quite quickly fill up the input box on the console. We're up to 40 buses in and 38 buses out. It's basically based on an Ableton looper with a bunch of custom elements to it. It's quite that simple really in terms of the electronics behind it. We have a custom interface which is built up from old Boss physical pedals, because that's the feel that Ed likes to have under his foot of the physical reaction of a Boss pedal. So we stripped all the guts out of the Boss pedals and used the physical buttons. But yeah, effectively it's just an Ableton looper. Ed doesn't require any complex monitoring. We have in-ear monitors and monitor speakers. We use both because he likes to hear the crowd. He likes to take his ears out and hear the crowd, but still obviously hear what he's doing. But also for more detailed parts like building the loops, he needs both ears in so he really can concentrate on what he's doing. But he likes it to stay the same. He doesn't want anyone to mix it. He wants it to be very, very consistent. So it was a very easy thing for me to do, to set it up, leave it well alone and get on with mixing in front of house. DiGiCo has always been my first choice. My initial things with DiGiCo back in the days of the D1 and the D5 was they felt good initially. They feel like an analog console. Coming from an analog background, I felt like it was still a very tactile console to use, without too many complicated layers to get through, which some of the other competitors had at the time. And as an added bonus, of course, the audio quality, I believe, is far superior than most of the consoles that were available at the time. I've stuck with DiGiCo because they've been reliable. And when I started with Ed, I was able to use the SD7, which is the smallest sort of 19-inch rack mount format. And it has grown to the other consoles as the show's grown and as the input list has increased. I have a few choice bits of outboard. I use an Avalon 737 on Ed's voice. That's a go-to piece of outboard I've always enjoyed with a male voice. The compression is very subtle, and the EQ is something I can instantly grab without having to find his vocal channel on the desk. I use 2 Bricasti M7s, one for voice, one for guitar. They're just the most transparent, most natural sounding reverbs I've ever come across. So I enjoy using those. And an Eventide harmonizer for vocal harmonies. Really, apart from the max bass BCL that I use to either enhance or reduce the low end frequencies, depending on which songs we're playing. Those are the only bits of outboard I use. Everything else is on board with the DiGiCo. The intriguing thing about this is it was not so much an upscaling as we downscaled it to do the arenas. We always had the stadium run in mind, so we designed the shows that would fit stadia, but we would scale down to squeeze into arenas for the year that went before it. There weren't tremendously huge challenges about downscaling it. It was quite an easy thing to do with the video walls being modular. We just took pieces of it out to make it fit into arenas. And kind of the reverse on doing stadiums. We're carrying our own steel, so in terms of things got easier, rigging got easier, although we're in different venues in different cities in different parts of the world. we have a lot more constants now than we had when we were in the arenas, so in many respects doing stadiums is a much easier day than doing the arenas. Well, things that changed obviously significantly between the two is we had 9 trucks of production on the arena run. That's now 18 trucks of production. And the same thing kind of happens with crew. We started with a crew of sort of 28 that we now tour in excess of 50 people on the road. The same things changed for our catering staff. We used to feed about 100 people a day, now feeding about 220. Our local crew requirements doubled, mainly not so much due to the size of the show, but the amount of pushing you have to do and the amount of plant we have increased. Yeah, we went from having like 35 crew on a loadout to having 102 crew on a loadout for the stadiums. So we started with getting stuff there. We use KB Event here in Europe to do our trucking. Stuart McPherson and his team from KB have been with us for as long as I've been with Ed, which is 8 years. He had our first small truck on the tour that now became all the Arctics we have now. We use Major Tom, an audio company, to do our audio. Again, been with us from the start. Meyer Sound company, so my choice of PA. We use kind of LCR, a gentleman called Mike Oates, for our lighting, and Colonel Tom for our video.
I first started with the tour back in 2015 when they were doing the Wembley shows at the end of the Multiply tour. And I was working as a systems technician, basically looking after the network and everything to do with the communications of the fixtures and the consoles. And at the end of those shows, I got the opportunity to step into the role as lighting operator for the Australian and New Zealand shows. And since then, I've stepped into the role of lighting director for the shows, for the Divide campaign. The one trademark thing that Mark does tend to like to do, from my experience, is he likes to not have fixtures be an element of the show. So if you look at our set, all our fixtures are recessed within the set, and they've got fascia cladding that basically tries to hide them from the view of the audience. The lighting isn't the key element, and we've tried to hide and disguise and keep that as neat and tidy as possible. The main concept of the look of the entire show is essentially to bring just one man who plays with the guitar and some loop pedals out to a large audience, whether it be an arena or a stadium. The concept is that one man needs to be as visible on stage to the people down in front as he is to the people as far away, all the way up in the back. So Mark Cunniffe designed the entire look of the show. He is the show designer, and the mother grid and all the trussing and all that have been supplied and manufactured by Tate. Well, this is our set. At the moment we're still putting it into place. We've been doing a bit of maintenance, but it's as you can see, it's a very 3D looking shape. We've got at the top what we call the crown, which basically is the video and the lighting that is visible mostly to the people at the back of the stadium. The crown essentially is what you would normally consider your front trusses, I guess, your overhead trusses. They give you the ability to project your fixtures out towards the audience, but they also give you the additional element of being able to tie in with the video crown screens that are already up there. So they tie in nicely with the video, and the fixtures essentially they're quite useful for being able to do the traditional look of having an audience or mulfe look. As we don't have traditional mulfes, we use our mythos to create that audience blinder look. And then we've got the ceilings that allow that video content that we create to flow down into the wall and the floor video screens. That allows us to create some 3D content that, to most people, or to the large portion of the audience, makes the stage not just a standard video screen at the back wall and iMac, but it gives it the ability to create shapes that look as though they're growing out from the stage. And we've got pods, mythos pods, that controlled by kinesis, that during the show we'll be able to come down and change the look and the dynamic of that show. And they create different looks within the show. So they create a canopy and they come down maybe just a little bit. with these pods. The only additions that we've made to the show since have been an extra meter and 1.2 meters in the video wall, and the same on the crown. They've got great color mixing abilities. They're very fast, very punchy. The output for a 440 watt bulb is very, very good. With the new Mythos 2 edition, their dimmer curve is a lot better and a lot smoother than the original. With all the custom waterproofing domes that we've got, their output is still very exceptional considering how much those domes actually take out of the output. So the kinesis moves that we do with the pods, they're there to essentially just change the dynamic of the show and create a different look. So having them come down in some of the bigger numbers, it just changes the look of the show, changes the feel, changes the dynamic of it. It opens up the set so that we can get the lights that we have, the Senius Unicos that we have hidden up within the mother grid, to be able to shine through and create a different feel and a different look that allow us to push light through from behind and change the dynamic and the elements of the show. So from back here you can see the 16 Unicos that sit up within the mother grid that give that extra dynamic to the show. And in between each of those Unicos is the Martin Atomic LED strobe. So there's no heavy strobing that you actually see from front with strobes. That's all behind the set, and it's more subtle and more used in keeping with the songs. The Unicos so far, I've thoroughly enjoyed them. We had an extra 8 in the arenas on the floor to give a little bit of an extra dynamic and to make the show look a little bit bigger in the smaller venues. Their output is brilliant, their output is very bright. So this is where all the video content and video cameras are cut. Video department sit here and cut all the cameras for the show, and the media servers here project and send all the content up to stage. So I trigger everything from out front over here, and all the cameras are fed into the media server and then cut live by the video director, Phil Mead. And we've got some RoboCams that are able to control 6 RoboCams around the stage. So we've got little Bradley 2s that are controlled from here. It's about finding a fine balance that's not detracting from the look of the visual elements from the content, but also not detracting from the performance that is Ed. I mean, he is one man, so it's crucial that we don't distract from that performance with too much light and too much trickery with all the lighting. I mean, with 136 fixtures, it's very easy to create many, many tricks, but we try and keep that as subtle and as tied in with the video content as we can. It's important to keep, a subtlety to the lighting, so it's not detracting from that one performance of one man on stage with the guitar. There are moments where we can utilise strobe and intense looks like that, but it's not a rave where you don't have a need or a good cause for using lasers or strobes or pyro. Everyone's come to see Ed, they've not come to see a lighting show, they've come to see Ed Sheeran perform, and the idea is that the lighting needs to complement that man. Okay, so we've got 136 Mythos 2, we've got 16 of the Claypaky Senius Unicos, we've got 12 of the Martin Atomic LED strobes, and we've got 5 of the Solaris Flare strobes, and we've also got on our delay towers 52 of the SGM G4 washers, or wash beams, and 12 of the SGM P10s. The delay tower lights, they're primarily to do backlighting for the audience, so they help to fill in for the front half of the stadium and to give a bit more of a backlight feel to that area of the show. They replicate as much as possible what we have going on in the rig, but primarily they're quite static. They don't move. They are essentially just color change or intensity chase fixtures. The show is programmed in a very structured manner, so I don't deviate too much from the programmed show. It's important to note that the show isn't a time code show. There's no way you can time code Ed, because things can change, things can happen, strings can break, set lists can change. So it's important that we are always able to reproduce and have a very consistent show, and using time code would not be the way to do that. There are fairly
live elements to it. For example, You Need Me, the final song of the set. There's a lot of stabs, a lot of live playbacks that I trigger manually, as well as running most of the show on a cue stack. There are the additional elements of using the flash buttons and temp buttons to create additional elements to the show.
I quite enjoy the use of the layout view because it's very easy to be able to select all your fixtures. It gives you a visual representation of the rig that is in front. So being able to lay out all your fixtures in a plan view and being able to view them that way is very handy. It means you can look at what you've got there, and it's a very close representation of what you have out there. I also like being able to have the use of macros. Being able to jump to a song is very handy, particularly with an artist that at times does like to change the set without warning. So it is very easy to be able to jump to a song, and it's not noticeable to the audience if there's been a set change. It just works and happens seamlessly. Also having plenty of playback space, particularly for songs where there's a lot going on. It's nice to have plenty of room to have your stab buttons and all your effect looks. Doing a lot of the show during the day does, it's not always easy because it affects many things, including follow spot and the spot balance. And because it is such a visual show, the follow spots are quite important for the show because it means that we have to balance them and make sure that they're balanced the right color temperature and the right intensity so that the content that we have will work with the cameras. So it is quite important. But the daylight does, it has a small effect in that the cameras need to compensate for that extra light. And you do miss a bit of the effect from all the lights, especially in the day. But by the time we actually go onto stage, it's usually quite late. So it's usually about 9:15 that we go on. So at that point, we're well and truly past dusk, and you still get a full feel for the show. This is my preferred console. I've got one of my own. I personally own one. I like the flexibility, the fact that you can set it up however you want. There is about a dozen different ways to achieve a single task. So it's customizable to each individual user. I have my own way of doing things, and I like that it is easy to be able to do the tasks that I like, and I don't need to think too much about it. I do like being able to create a list of macros that I use to cut down my workflow and make my workflow a lot easier. That makes it easier to get through my daily job of doing my focus, doing any programming I might need to do. And it does make it easy at the beginning of a tour to be able to do that programming quite simply, because you have all your macros right there that cut down a lot of the time in case something goes wrong with the other one. So it means I can easily just jump across to this one and go straight into the show if something goes wrong, and they track each other. So whatever I do on this console, that console's obviously doing. So if this stops working, this one will take over and continue doing it. And I've got the same flexibility and the same size console, so everything's there for me. It's very easy, and it just tracks throughout the show. The media servers are triggered from the console, so all the visual elements are triggered from this end of the multi-core. There's a video department that backstage will mix and cut camera looks, but all the visual elements are triggered from me here. I have a monitor here that gives me a look at what, I basically get a quad view that gives me all the different camera looks there, so I can see when we're during the show how the light balance is looking, whether I need to add a bit more backlight, whether I need to pull down on some of the fill light. It just gives me the ability to be able to keep up with the video department and ensure that they're getting the look that they need to be able to create the effects, and that the video that they're projecting to their screens is going to work.
The joy of working with someone like Ed for so many years and going up from doing clubs all the way to doing stadiums is we had a period of time where we had to use various PA systems that were installed into venues, or we went into territories where we weren't able to specify our preferred brand. So I got to experiment with a lot of PA systems and reaffirmed my beliefs all the way along, really, that the Meyer Sound system is most certainly the sound system for what we do with Ed. particularly now it's really evident in the stadiums that you can go to the back seats of a stadium and clearly hear Ed's vocal and Ed's guitars, and being those are the only two things being played or being listened to, is critical that they get all the way there, almost as critical as it would be for a comedian, because without hearing all of it you'd lose the joke. Quite interestingly, last night we played here in Munich, and we have a noise monitoring system measuring for the council to make sure we don't exceed certain levels, and they discovered that when I was 97 at the crowd barrier, I was 95 at front of house, and we were 93 at the monitoring position. Now, front of house is 50 metres from the downstage barrier, and the monitoring system was over 150 metres away from the downstage area. So it goes to show what kind of even coverage we actually are achieving across stadiums. And I don't really believe that without an awful lot more hangs of PA system, any other system would do it the way that the Meyer system does.
Our system comprises of main hangs of 18 Leo. The side hangs are also 18 Leo. We have some flown 1100 LFC subs. We're using 9 aside. And on the ground we're using 12 1100 LFC subs per side, set up in an N-Fire configuration. And this is supplemented by 54 Milo as delays, and then some Meyer Sound Lena and Leopard as infills and front fills. We're using Meyer's new Galaxy processors to run the whole system. Handles all the time alignment, EQ, phase correction for all of the hangs. And this is also combined with the use of Sim3, which obviously does the analysis and analysis side for EQing and timing the system. Now, we're in Munich today. It's a lovely venue from 1972 World Summer Olympics, but an interesting one because it has a beautiful kind of glass roof all on one side, so it's pretty much an asymmetrical space. The big challenge in here really has been getting the right coverage of all the seats whilst also trying to minimize any reflections off the glass roof. Obviously the Leo is pretty good in that it's been able to get the cover a good distance up to the sides of the venue. But we have for this room just supplemented our main system with some ring delays. So we've got 4 hangs of L-acoustics K2 just on the one side of the venue, just covering the upper seats, which has been pretty helpful in kind of creating really nice smooth coverage on that one side, and helping to keep any extraneous noise from reflecting around the venue. It was originally the choice of the front of house engineer Chris Marsh. He's had quite a lot of experience with Meyer Sound, using the Milo, and really enjoyed using it. And then quite early on was able to try the Leo and found that it just really suited the act, and that he really, and we've stuck with it since then. We have had the opportunity, whilst doing shows around the world, to try most of the other sort of name brands on the market, and just found that for us, Meyer Sound has really fit what we need it to do, and it's the most suitable choice for this tour. We're using Meyer Sound throughout 2017 for the arena tour, and really moving into stadiums, there's an element of really just increasing the size of the hangs at the stage end, and increase the number of sub-bass cabinets. So our Leo hangs we were using 14 in arenas with a downfill, and now we've just expanded that up to 18. Obviously, the biggest change really is the addition of 4 delay towers, which, given the size of the venues, was just totally necessary. We've pretty much stuck with the same front fill and sub configuration. We found that the N-Fire subs on the floor were really helpful in getting a good level of bass in the front of house area, and creating the smoothest coverage pattern we could get, whilst without putting center sub-bass arrays, which can cause problems with Ed's guitar. So it's a sort of still a left and right sub configuration, but the Endfire has been working really well for us. We did add increase the number of subs we're using. I think we were using 9 aside last year, and we've increased it to 12. The same with the flown subs in the air, have now gone up to 9 per side as well. Yeah, that's kind of it. I'd say in terms of the system tuning, from moving from arenas into stadiums, one of the big challenges has been, first of all, getting the coverage everywhere. Although we've nearly doubled the amount of speakers on the tour, the venues have been probably trebling in size. So it's a big area to cover. So that has been one challenge. And with the space being so much larger, just getting the time alignment of all the elements to a satisfactory point has been quite a steep learning curve, as well as the adjusting for the summation of all the arrays, where you can be sat in seats where you might be hearing 2 or 3 different hangs, all with slightly different arrival times, and just trying to pinpoint a problem frequency and which hang it might specifically be coming from, or if it's just the combination of those different elements arriving. It's been quite an interesting challenge, but one that we are enjoying now.
With a great bunch of people, that's number one. I mean, it's a great family to be part of, but also being able to travel the world and do what you're very passionate about and enjoy doing. It's a great privilege to be able to see the world and be with a great bunch of people. I work for an incredible artist that I have a hell of a amount of respect for, and it's a lot of fun just to be out and do what I enjoy doing on a day-to-day basis.